Imagine if a third of the money in your bank account disappeared. What if every third product that a company manufactured was defective? What if a moving company lost a third of your things? Well, what if I told you that 1/3 of the world's available food either spoils or gets thrown away before it ever reaches a plate? And when we throw away food, we're also throwing away the water, the energy, and the land that's used to produce that food. Food waste is a massive resource drain. 25% of our water, 30% of our farmland is used to produce food that never gets eaten. When we throw away 1 egg, that's the equivalent of throwing away 55 gallons of water. That's what it takes to make an egg. Food that's never eaten generates 8% of our globe's greenhouse gases. If food waste were measured like a country, it would come 3rd behind the US and China for harmful emissions. And this adds up quickly. Food that we never eat costs us nearly $1 trillion every year. That's more than the combined profits of the Fortune 500 companies in 2015. So you might be wondering, how is this happening? Where is this happening? Well, in developing countries like India or Kenya or Tanzania, food is lost during or soon after it's harvested on the farm, because farmers don't always have access to the best techniques and technologies and solutions to grow and harvest and transport their food. Because the journey from the farm to the market can take days or weeks. Imagine plastic bags full of ripe, freshly picked tomatoes, stacked up on an old rickety truck that has to travel miles and miles over a dirt road in sweltering heat. Now imagine what those tomatoes might look like after that journey. You might end up with something that looks more like tomato soup than those ripe tomatoes that you started with. But most of the world's food waste is actually happening in developed countries, like here in the US. And it's not happening on the farm. In fact, 85% of food waste in developed countries happens with consumers and retailers. From people throwing away excess food in cafeterias because we couldn't decide whether we wanted the chicken or the pasta, so we took both, but actually we weren't that hungry. To parents throwing away perfectly good food because of confusing expiration date labeling. In fact, the average family spends nearly $1,500 a year on food that they never eat. That's nearly 3,000 meals every year. Because grocery stores reject slightly imperfect fruits and vegetables, because they know that consumers, like you and me, are less likely to buy that ugly or weird-looking pepper. And that means that we're throwing away 400 pounds of food per person every year, just here in the US. Food is the #1 thing that's filling our landfills. And yet, 1 in 7 Americans goes hungry every day. Left unchecked, we know that this problem is only going to get worse. In less than 30 years, there will be 2 billion more mouths to feed. And at current rates, we know that we will need to increase production of food by 70% to meet that demand, and use that much more land and water and energy that, frankly, we don't have. So this can seem pretty bleak and overwhelming, and it is. But I'm here to tell you that there's good news. The good news is that it doesn't have to be this way. Instead of producing more and more, we can waste less. We have the technology and the resources to feed 7, even 9 billion people, because food waste is preventable. And that's why a team of us at the Rockefeller Foundation are teaming up with governments and companies, entrepreneurs and innovators across the world to make a big bet. We're going to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030, cut it in half, to ensure that more good food can get to more people. How are we going to do this? Well, we're working across Africa to make sure that farmers have what they need to grow, harvest, and sell more of what they grow. We're working here in the US to raise awareness and to pilot solutions that have the power to transform cities and whole industries, to inspire consumers like you to take action and change behaviors that lead to food waste in the first place. So there's one thing that we've learned from our work over the years that I wanted to share with you today. It's something that's core and common to every solution that's worked, whether it's in Africa or here in the US. It's that, yes, we do need to think big if we're going to tackle this wicked problem of food waste. But we also need to think small and act small at the local and individual level. It's going to take a global effort to address food waste at the magnitude that we need. But in order to get there, we each need to do our own small part. We need to find those small solutions that are going to work for me and for you and for the restaurant owner in LA and for the farmer in Tanzania. Let me show you what this could look like. Last year, we launched an open call. We challenged people to bring us their best ideas of how to reduce food waste, with prizes going to the winning ideas. We received incredible entries from small business owners and college students how to reduce food waste in their own dorm rooms in their communities. From ideas like small hacks that you can do in your kitchen to store bread, keep it fresher, longer, to a new type of muffin made from dehydrated fruit and vegetable byproducts, like a banana peel, something that can serve as a healthy breakfast option in schools. I am not going to vouch on how good the muffins taste. To apps that identify at-risk food that's going to be thrown out by restaurants and businesses, and services that create paid jobs for the food runners to take that excess food and get it to where it needs to go, like homeless shelters. To innovative signage that we can put in grocery stores and farmers markets that give tips to consumers on how to use produce that might be a little past its prime, how to use the tops of carrots that we all throw away. And what's great about all of these ideas is that they were developed by normal people because they saw food waste happening in their kitchens and their communities, and they took action to do something about it. And so now we're doing our part to connect these folks to incubators and universities and other funding sources to make these ideas become real. What's so great about all of these solutions is that even though they may seem small in scale, together they represent a movement. To make big change, sometimes you need to start small. But sometimes it's not about creating that new solution or finding the brand new innovative idea. Sometimes it's about taking an existing solution and making it work for people who need it. And that's why we're working to get solutions, technologies that we know work, into the hands of farmers across Africa, in Kenya and Nigeria and Tanzania. Simple solutions, like bags that are triple layered and can be hermetically sealed so that no air can get in or out. So that when farmers store their crops inside the bags, like rice or corn, it doesn't rot and pests can't get in and ruin it. Farmers who were losing 50 to 70% of their crops because they didn't have access to good storage solutions now have a safe and surefire way to store all their crops and be confident they won't spoil. That makes a huge difference for these farmers. It means more food for their families. It means more money in their pockets because what they don't eat, they can sell. So it sounds like a pretty simple, straightforward solution, but there was a catch. There's always a catch. When we talked to farmers, we spent time on their farms, they said, even though each one of these bags only costs a few dollars, it's too much for us. They couldn't afford them. These farmers, many of them, are living on less than $1 a day, and they have school fees and medical bills. So we decided we need to do something about that. We need to make sure that this solution can work for them. And so now we're working with local manufacturers to drive down the production costs of these bags. We're working with local banks to come up with innovative financing tools, loans, layaway programs for farmers so that they can pay a little bit each month so that come harvest time, they've paid off the cost of the bags. By listening to what these farmers needed, we can now make these bags available, but also affordable for millions. And that means that we can dramatically reduce food waste on all of these farms, but more importantly, that means that we're empowering farmers to be able to invest in their own futures and the futures of their families. To make big change, sometimes you need to start small. And that's what I mean when I say that we need to think big and small if we're going to beat food waste. We need to raise awareness at the global level, work with corporations, work with governments to change policies and practices that can catalyze how we think about food waste at the systemic level. But we also need to source ideas from the ground up, from moms and chefs and farmers, to make solutions that work for everyone, whether you're growing corn in Tanzania or packing a lunch for your 6-year-old here in the US. We're just getting started, and there are ways for everyone to get involved, whether it's coming up with recipes of how to use your leftovers or thinking about how your office, how your business can waste less. Maybe it's volunteering for your local food rescue organization, or maybe it's buying that ugly-looking pepper. That's how we're going to beat food waste, together. And that's how we're going to create more economic opportunity, how we're going to protect our planet, and how we're going to feed more people. Thank you.